You cannot call me. I do not listen to voicemails. And I've also learned that I'm not alone. Now, that is not a joke. I'm deadly serious. From having more success on the phone right now is to say...
You're reframing, right? Like I hear you always talk about reframing the sale process, right?
What happens between now and 4:30 is they get prepared to come to that conversation with a game plan and be ready and are more responsible to take the next actions. I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. Before you get into buyer's agency agreement, before we sneak attack people with terms and conditions about how we're going to get paid.
I mean, 7 years flew by and you've helped, over 2 million. I mean, back then, 2 million, 3 million people easily, right?
Yep.
Many different continents. Does it matter outside of the words that we're saying? Because, our Phone Warriors group is a group of real estate agents, over 1,400 of us, which we prospect daily. So
Right.
we start with the phone. So is there any tonality, any tricks, or any different ways to say a particular word to maybe keep the prospect on the phone versus like hanging up right away? Like, what could you maybe give a little snippet of the, because
I have a lot of thoughts about this, and one big one is the diminishing success that can be had from cold calling people. And I don't believe that cold calling is dead. That's not what I'm saying. What I believe is that there are more and more people, and a growing number of people, that choose actively to not answer their phone. Like,
okay,
I'm one of them. You cannot call me on the telephone. I am permanently on Do Not Disturb. The only
okay,
time I will be off of Do Not Disturb is like in situations like now. My mother-in-law is in hospital for a routine operation, but my phone is off of Do Not Disturb right now in case my wife needs to catch me in an emergency, etc. But any other time I'm in Do Not Disturb. You cannot call me. I do not listen to voicemails. And I've also learned that I'm not alone. We've done some science and research around this. My friend Jason Dorsey runs a human behavior organization, has done research studies on this. And the majority of people in the age bracket between 30 and 50, i.e. in real estate, our customer base, looking to be able to make moves, will actively choose to not answer the phone without that phone call being scheduled first.
okay.
I don't know if you do this in your own life. Like, do you have buddies that if they called you blindly, you think there's a problem, but if they text you first and said, "Hey, buddy, you got a minute?"
That's
the
true.
text gives permission for you to be able to reply to. So what I'd be looking at from having more success on the phone right now is to say, how do you increase the number of scheduled phone calls that you can make? How do you use tools like email and contact forms and digital downloads and text message to mean that the phone call is at the permission of the other person? Because sure, you can sneak attack people. You can get them into a phone call, and we can use techniques to keep them engaged and have them on the phone. But the challenge in the real estate space right now is the goal is that we want to maintain a relationship, prove that we're valuable, demonstrate empathy, help somebody over a long-term mission. So the aggressive sales tactics that could be used to keep them on the phone have you being a non-identity to the identity that you'd like to be seen as the most valuable person. So I'd be doing a lot today to say, well, how do I prospect using text message to get permission-based phone calls? And we've been experimenting a lot of this with real estate teams where we'll send, I'm not sure if it's for you, but how open-minded would you be type text messages and getting people like, yeah, I'd love to learn more about that, to then say via text, like, when would be a good time for us to explore this further? And they're like, anytime after 5. And you're like, how would you feel if I call you at 5:15 this evening? They're like, that'd be awesome. And actually using some back forth on text message to get to a point that the other person is excited about the phone call and is in the right environment to have the kind of conversation you'd like to have. Because often when you're sneak attacking somebody with a cold call, you might get them on the phone, you might keep them in the conversation, but it's highly unlikely that they were in an environment to have the type of conversation you'd like to have with them.
Is this based on, though, Phil, like what you're saying is that you want the prospect to be as attentive as possible to the service
100%.
or, right? This is what we're talking about.
You're reframing, right? Like I hear you always talk about reframing the sale process, right?
Well, let's move it out of context, right? Is if you're leading a team full of people and you want to have a conversation with an underperforming agent in your team, you can sneak attack them when they come through the office. You can tap them on the shoulder and say, have you got a minute? And they're going to say, yeah, sure. If they have a minute or not. And you can then deliver them the news about like all the things they're doing wrong and the things that they should be doing differently, and you get everything off your chest that you wanted to get off your chest, but they don't receive that information right because they didn't have the processing to get ready for that conversation.
Okay.
You'd be better to tap them on the shoulder and say, like, I know that you've said that you wanted to be doing better than what you're currently doing right now. When would be a good time for us to get together, this week to explore what's happening and what needs to be done differently? And they're like, well, I got some calls I need to make now, but I'm free this afternoon. And you're like, well, how are you looking after 4:15? And they're like, yeah, I'm good with that. You're like, well, what about my office 4:30? They're like, that's great. What happens between now and 4:30 is they get prepared to come to that conversation with a game plan and be ready and are more responsible to take the next actions. And I think the same is true when we're prospecting for clients right now. Sometimes we burn or bruise opportunities because we tried to have the conversation we wanted to have before we had permission too soon. It's like we messed up the first date because we tried to have the first date when we were actually just making eyes.
So like so let's take a different approach then. Like let's say that you're talking about like, going back to that example of the leadership, right? Okay, you're saying to someone, hey, do you have a minute to I want to talk about something, like, okay, and then you start talking about it, but it doesn't go anywhere so what I'm hearing is different frameworks. What I'm hearing is getting people, so knowing what to say and how to say it clearly is like your thing, but really it's also understanding it. Would you say that it only really works with the right, okay, I'm in the right mental frame to have this conversation, and that's when the words really work?
Well, Dean, you sat through our certification program, and the thing we spend a huge amount of time talking about at the start of our certification program is our 4 cornerstones of conversational excellence. Mm-hmm. And the first of those is something I've often shared from stage in keynotes as a joke, and it's that the worst time to think about the thing you're going to say is in the moment you're saying it. Now, that is not a joke. I'm deadly serious. People think success on the phone or success in sales conversations is all about knowing your scripts, knowing your words, knowing your lines. Now, that's all useful. But what we're really looking at being able to do is to master moments. So the starting point is what are the moments that matter most? I got big brokerages talking to me right now about how do we help our team be able to share their value proposition more effectively on the buy side? Is what are we doing to be able to demonstrate to consumers that we're worth our fees, etc. I'm like, whoa. Before you get into buyer's agency agreement, before we sneak attack people with terms and conditions about how we're going to get paid, wouldn't we be better to say, where is the right moment for us to bring up, here are our terms of engagement? Where does that moment exist? And we shouldn't show them any properties until we've got a buyer's agency agreement in place. I'm like, okay, yeah, that's really utopian and idealistic. That you're not going to engage with somebody and a lead comes through that somebody wants to see 123 Main Street, and you're like, I'm not going to show you unless you sign this piece of paper that you're going to pay me a fortune first. Where does the moment exist? And there's no right answer to that, but there is a consideration. How do you want your recipe or your playbook, your unique way to be able to show up, that you explain to somebody, here's how I can help you achieve blank? And I use the analogy of comparison to the restaurant business, right? Is there are some restaurants that you pull up to a speakerphone and you tell them what you're ordering and then you pay for it before you get your food. Mm. And there are other restaurants that you can take a seat, you can rack up a bill of thousands of dollars without any form of credit check. And at the end of it, they assume that you're just going to pay what they asked for and add 25% gratuity. They're all in the restaurant business. No one is the right way of being able to do things, but there needs to be a consideration of where do the moments exist within your customer experience for you to have the conversation you'd like to have. And that could be buyer's agency agreement, could be referral, could be review, could be price adjustment, could be marketing plan, it could be differentiator versus competition. But the work I'd be doing before you even look at working on scripting is, can we define the moments where we would like to have the conversations with pre-agreed outcomes? And the mistake I see most heavy prospecting agents make right now is they try and have tomorrow's conversation today.
Okay. So what would you suggest then? So if we have some practical advice for people out there right now, is that how do you know you're getting into the right moment to present what is going to help them get what they want?